I was wrong about Emilia, and I'm sure a lot of people were as well. Coming out of the first season of ReZero, it's very easy to come to the conclusion that Emilia was underwhelming as a main heroine. However, in my case, it was much more extreme. I really didn't like Emilia. I'd go as far as to say I hated Emilia. I thought she had no character, that she was useless, always relied on others, and was overall just really boring to watch. And now she's my favorite female character of ReZero. She's such a kind and understanding person in a world that never gave her the chance to be herself. She's so strong-willed and determined to do what's right no matter how dire her situation becomes. We see how strong and capable she is, but the series isn't afraid to show us her vulnerabilities and how human she truly is. So what changed? Well, a couple of things, but if I had to narrow it down to why I hated her so much, it was simply due to ignorance. In my entire time watching the first season, I never tried to understand her. I closed-mindedly formed my opinion of her, and it didn't matter what she did to improve. I was always going to hate her. That, coupled with unreasonable bias and my lack of empathy towards her, it truly feels surreal to look back on it. As much as I love ReZero to death, the truth is, when I first watched it, I didn't understand how much of a masterpiece it was. It wasn't until the second half of season 2 where I realized that I had been watching this show with my eyes closed. Needless to say, my opinion of the first season were in line with the general consensus of the community at the time. That being the show's all about the waifu wars. Who's better, Emilia or Rem? Whichever you choose, they're your ride or die, and the other can fall into a void to be forgotten about. What I failed to see was the bigger picture. My thoughts, such as Emilia being too dependent on others, making her unreliable despite her trying to become Queen of Lagunica. I viewed this as a flaw in the show's writing instead of viewing it for what it was, a character flaw. Emilia is supposed to be unreliable in the beginning. She's supposed to be undeveloped because it's Subaru and Rem that are the main focus of season 1. It's not her time to shine just yet. But despite that, I'd still say she serves her role pretty well. When we meet Emilia for the first time, we see straight away that she's a person who will always help someone in need. This core part of her personality is something that never changes no matter how far into the series you go. However, aside from a broad perspective of her personality, we really don't get to know her all that well. I find it interesting that during the time Subaru's love for Emilia is seen as toxic, it's when the audience has little knowledge of who she is. I personally believe that choosing to purposefully ignore developing Emilia at the start is actually genius. Because while the audience doesn't know her, neither does Subaru. Our perception of her is exactly the same as his. She's portrayed as this almost perfect figure, an angel that can do no wrong. She's so kind that she'll even cry over someone who slaughtered a whole village. And my assumption was that this was going to be her whole character. Just your typical bare bones kind person who's got nothing else going for her. And I, for the life of me, could not understand why Subaru was so obsessed with her. Now, this is completely my fault for not being able to see the bigger picture. This depiction of Emilia is done so the audience can view how Subaru sees her. However, by making her this way, it's very easy to view her as a boring character. Remember, first impressions are very important. She gets saved from facing any consequences for losing her insignia. She doesn't contribute to the Marbeast attack in the village. She does nothing during the witch cult attack, and yet she's supposed to be the main heroine of the series? How in the world could she possibly be fit to rule a kingdom? Well, the thing is, she's not. Not once in the first season does it imply that Emilia is a good fit to rule Lagunica. Just because she's a candidate doesn't necessarily mean she'd be a good queen. Say what you will about the other candidates, despite how questionable they seem, they still feel more capable of the role than Emilia. And because of all the prejudice she faces, it seems impossible that the public would be okay with this. She might be able to defend herself when people are looking down on her, but there's so many different things that are needed to be a good leader. And that's when we get into season 2, which single-handedly changed my opinions on Emilia as a character. By placing Emilia in a situation where she has to have this responsibility of doing the trials. You can already see the clear contrast between season 1, which had everyone doing everything for her. Due to being stuck in the sanctuary and having the responsibility of saving the villagers and the people who live in this place, it immediately tests Emilia's capabilities. When faced with true conflict where she can't rely on others, will she be able to pull through and get the job done? Hell no. She fails, and attempt after attempt, she's not able to see this responsibility through. The show is clearly telling us that the current Emilia isn't good enough. From Subaru's trial, we see that there's 3 in total, with the first one being facing your past. You're basically shown your biggest regret, and the way to pass it is to move forward and accept it. In Subaru's case, it was him living in his father's shadow, and how it turned him into someone who's suffering in self-loathing, unable to cope with his own insecurities. The thing is, he basically went through this trial in season 1, so this was more him getting closure with his Subaru's parents and giving us a better understanding of Subaru's character. He passes the first trial, but Emilia can't. For some reason, she's unable to accept what happened in her past. And the show teases us, not revealing what's happening straight away. But from her reactions, it's clear that whatever she saw didn't just upset her, it traumatized her. We later find out that Emilia had her memories of her childhood suppressed by Puck and also by Pandora. Season 2 does a lot of things for the entire Emilia camp as a whole. For Subaru, he has to confront his worth to others. Garfield has to let go of his fear of the outside world. Roswell has to just stop being a bitch. But with Emilia, they strip her of all her safety nets and toss her right into the deep end. At the beginning of Season 2, Emilia is vocal about wanting others to rely on her. However, actions speak louder than words. So when things like Puck disappearing, which means she doesn't have that person who she could always rely on, or having to face a past that you're not ready to deal with, for her to not be able to push through those adversities just goes to show that she's all talk. But ReZero has always been a show about growth, reflecting on your actions, and striving to become the best version of yourself no matter how many challenges you face. So when you finally get into the payoff of Emilia's character development, it feels so rewarding. When Subaru finally finds that resolve to work through all those obstacles that he had to go through, he's able to help Emilia start walking. Seeing their conversation of when Emilia ran away after she started getting her memories back due to Puck breaking their contract, we finally see someone call Emilia out on her actions. Everything, her dependency on others, how she's all talk and is all around pretty useless. But Subaru still accepts her simply because he loves her. He believes she'll be able to push through whatever's bothering her. He has faith she'll be able to accomplish what she set out to do. This scene truly breaks down both of their characters and solidifies their care for each other. Anyone who still says their relationship is toxic after this scene needs to get their eyes checked, because this pedestal Subaru placed on Emilia, and in turn how it's easy for the audience to perceive her as a boring character with nothing going for her, all of that gets thrown away. Emilia at the end of the day is just a girl. She might be strong and compassionate to others, but that doesn't mean she doesn't have anxieties or worries. She might be able to handle situations where she faces prejudice from others, but that doesn't mean those horrible words they throw at her don't shake Emilia to her core. Subaru's actions of his faith to Emilia is what's able to allow her to find what that thing is she needs to move forward no matter how dire things become. And finally getting into her backstory, yeah, it's tragic. Especially when you take into account that Emilia went through all of this at around the age of 7. But looking into who she was before all that, she was adorable. She was a bit mischievous, sneaking out of her house, always wanting things to go her way, and yeah, bottom line, Emilia was just what you'd expect from a normal kid. We get introduced to Fortuna, who's her mother figure, different elves from the forest, and bloody Betelgeuse of all people. There are a lot of mysterious aspects about Emilia's backstory, such as what's behind that sealed door and all the things with the witch's cult. But what it shows us with Emilia is how horrible her past really is. When inevitably the witch cult attacks, everything is sent into chaos. Her having to witness her father figure kill Fortuna, the person she loved the most, and still having the strength to comfort her at her dying breath was devastating. We were obviously given a bit of time to form a bond with these people, and to have everything unfold the way things do completely recontextualizes a lot of things from season 1, such as Emilia crying after having killed Betelgeuse, or even the bits of dialogue we get from him. The trauma this 7-year-old girl faces breaks her. The contrast with how she was at the beginning of the backstory, this kind-hearted girl who just wanted to have fun, to someone who wants nothing more than to kill this person in front of them is insane. Emilia broke here, and if it wasn't for all the memory wiping she experienced, it's not improbable to assume she would have gone insane. And the cherry on top, her being the sole reason everyone was frozen, adds so much to this. Because while Emilia may be suffering right now, she's also forced it onto all the people who have done nothing but care for her. However, the lesson to take from this is that Emilia was only a child faced with a horrible situation. Despite her being the reason everyone got turned into ice, you can't really blame her for this. What truly matters is what she wants to do now that she finally has all the information. And her goal hasn't changed. She's still trying to thaw everyone from the ice. However, now Emilia truly understands the weight she has on her shoulders. And despite that, still wants to save her people. She finally found that thing which will allow her to push through any adversities, and it was the bond she had with her mother. Look, by this point, I was dumbfounded. I didn't think it was possible, but after witnessing those past couple episodes, I fell in love with Emilia's character. Rewatching the show with new lens, everything became so much clearer. What I once thought was a bland, boring heroine shifted into something much deeper. Emilia is a girl who didn't know 7 years worth of memories, was frozen for 100 years, and came out and lived in a forest isolated from others aside from Puck for another 7 years. And no matter what she did during then, everyone was terrified of her because of her resemblance to the witch. In what world would someone like that be in any way reliable? No shit, Emilia was the way she was in season 1. The truth is, she barely had any positive experiences with people, is in the process of still learning about others and the world around her, is constantly faced with prejudice, all the while she has this enormous weight of trying to become the next ruler of the kingdom. Why would she even know something as simple as love? She's never experienced it. It's not a far cry for her to be unable to understand why Subaru pushes himself so hard for her, because all she's ever known is rejection. No one has ever told her it's okay to be sad, it's okay to have worries. It's okay to fail as long as you learn from it and try again. Her whole upbringing at that point had been from Puck of all people, and that guy's the biggest gatekeeper in the series. He's useless. Okay, look, in all honesty, Puck actually did a pretty good job. The only issue with their relationship is that dependency she had towards him. Because of all the horrible things Emilia would face, Puck was the only source of comfort to her. When a relationship is built on that foundation, it can very easily turn into something toxic. While I can't fault Emilia too much simply because she genuinely didn't have anyone else to talk to, it doesn't change the fact that without Puck, she's not able to fully cope with any issues she faces. But looking at her now, the amount of growth she experienced is night and day. Emilia proved herself in season 2 by completing the trials, and in the next seasons we can see how that development carried through. In season 3, Emilia is a powerhouse. With her getting captured by Regulus, it could have easily turned into a damsel in distress where the hero needs to save her. But the truth is, Emilia could have left whenever she wanted. It's that compassion she had for the wives that made her stay. While Subaru had faith Emilia would overcome any adversities she faced in season 2, she had faith that her knight would come and save her in season 3. And it's their teamwork alongside Reinhard that allowed them to beat the shit out of Regulus. Everything just comes full circle. Subaru's love for Emilia is what helped her grow, and vice versa in season 4, where Emilia's love for Subaru is what helps him find his reason to save everyone. Their relationship is absolutely beautiful. They rely on each other while fully trusting that the other person will accomplish what they need to do. They have such a deep understanding of each other that they're able to be that pillar of support when they need it. However, they also push each other to be better. Looking back on everything I thought was wrong with her and the series shoving it in her face, telling her that she needs to change, made me finally understand Emilia. I was wrong. Through and through. Everything that I thought was a flaw in the writing and how the series didn't even try to create an interesting heroine to follow was actually just me being closed-minded, refusing to understand what the creator was trying to portray. Emilia has depth, and for me to dislike her because the show portrayed her as this angel that can do no wrong when in actuality there was a lot that was wrong with her, goes to show that not everything is black and white. Opinions can change and emotions that were once extreme can slowly shift over time. Emilia, a character who I once hated, had become one of my favorites in the series. Hey guys, if you enjoyed the video and want to see more rezero content, then liking and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you don't like Emilia and this video has interested you into looking deeper into her character, then I've done my job. But anyways, that's all I have to say for now. See ya.